Let me start with a question you may have never truly paused to consider. When was the last time you felt genuinely peaceful inside yourself? Not peaceful on vacation, not peaceful because work finally slowed down, but peaceful right in the middle of your busy, noisy, overwhelming everyday life. If you had to think hard to remember, or you couldn't remember at all, you're not alone. In my years of therapeutic work here in the United States, I've seen the same pattern repeat itself over and over. People try so hard to stay strong, to control everything outside of them, that one day they look around and realize they've lost control of themselves without even noticing. And that's why the very first rule of Stoicism remains as powerful today as it was thousands of years ago. Live with inner order. Not the order of your room, not the order of your desk, but the order of your inner world, the one only you can access. I want you to picture this. You walk into a dark room. Everything is piled up. There's no clear path. One small touch and something collapses. When your inner world is that cluttered, every external trigger, no matter how small, feels like a heavy blow. That's why a single email can ruin your mood for an entire day. A tiny comment can crush your confidence. A small conflict can drain all of your energy. Not because these things are big, but because your inner space is already overflowing, messy, and fragile. Even Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of an entire empire, the man who faced war, plague, rebellion, and unthinkable loss, wrote, "The soul needs a place to retreat." And that place wasn't the palace. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't escape. It was inner order. The Stoics believed, the more chaotic the outer world becomes, the more order we must create within. And that's exactly what many of us have forgotten. I want to tell you about one of my clients. Let's call her Anna. Anna was capable, reliable, and endlessly patient with everyone around her. But one day she walked into my office and said, "I can't take it anymore. I don't understand why small things make me explode. I don't want to be this way, but I don't know how to stop." When I asked her to describe what she felt inside, she said something I think many of us can relate to. "My mind feels like a storage room. Everything gets shoved in there. Nothing gets cleared out, and I don't even know where to start." We didn't begin by changing her job. We didn't begin by reducing her responsibilities. We began with inner order. The Stoics had a simple but incredibly powerful practice: emotional cleanup. Every night before bed, sit down and write 3 things that unsettled you that day. No analysis. No justification. Just a name. Anxiety. Frustration. Unfairness. Hurt. Pressure. When you name an emotion, it stops owning you. The brain responds completely differently when something vague becomes something clear. Naming is an act of liberation. It's like turning on the light in a dark room. Suddenly, everything becomes easier to navigate. 3 weeks later, Anna returned and said, "I'm not free from my emotions. But they aren't driving the car anymore. They're just passengers now." That is inner order. And then there's the morning, the most important time for your mind. The Stoics taught that before the world enters you, you must decide what you will master. Not 10 things. Not a long list that stresses you even more. Just one thing. Ask yourself, what is the one thing I commit to controlling today? It could be staying calm. Not reacting too fast. Speaking honestly. Focusing on one meaningful task. Maintaining steady breathing during stress. When you choose one thing, you're also choosing to let go of the hundreds of things that aren't yours to carry today. That is order. That is a boundary. That is the fortress protecting you from the chaos of the world. And then, one day, you'll notice something beautiful. The world is still chaotic, just as it's always been. People still say difficult things. Unexpected events still happen. But you don't fall apart the way you used to. You stand firmer. You stay steadier. You discover space inside yourself, space to think, to feel, to choose your response. That is inner order. Not the absence of storms, but the ability to stand strong in the middle of them. And when you become stronger on the inside, all the other rules begin to unfold more naturally. Because now, you have a solid foundation, one that every meaningful change, small or big, needs to stand on. And with that foundation in place, we can move into the next rule, one where many people begin to experience the most visible transformation. Training the body, the foundation of the mind. If the mind needs order to remain steady, the body is the ground where that order takes root. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. I want you to recall a morning when you woke up and felt your body heavy as stone. Not because you were sick, but because you had neglected it for far too long. You tried to focus, but your mind felt foggy. You wanted to stay calm, yet the smallest thing made you tense. You wanted to make clear decisions, but your thoughts kept slipping into a kind of mental haze. Over the years of counseling, I've met so many people who came to me saying they had psychological problems. But when we dug deeper, the story always led back to the simplest things. They weren't sleeping enough. They were eating mindlessly. They were sitting far too much. They had forgotten what it felt like to move, to breathe deeply, to sweat, and then they blamed their mind for being weak. The truth is this: no one can maintain a strong mind while living inside a weakened body. The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago, long before brain scans or modern neuroscience. To them, the body wasn't just a vessel, it was a tool of reason. It was the soil in which the house of the spirit is built. When the body weakens, the mind wavers. I often tell my patients that the body is the easiest thing to change, the easiest thing to improve, and the place where results show up first. And when the body changes, the mind follows. This isn't vague philosophy, it's neuroscience. Our brain consumes about 20% of the body's energy. When you sleep too little, eat poorly, or never move, the brain shifts into survival mode. It no longer has the resources to help you think deeply, regulate emotions, or make wise decisions. The mind becomes fragile because the body is no longer supporting it. That's why Stoicism has always been clear: if you want to train the mind, begin by training the body. I want to share with you the story of Mark, a businessman I once worked with. He was successful, constantly busy, and proud of his ability to handle stress. But then he started losing sleep, feeling anxious, struggling to focus. He told me, "My rational mind is still strong. It's just that my emotions won't cooperate anymore." When I asked him about his daily routine, I discovered he slept only 5 hours a night, lived on fast food because he didn't have time, and the only physical movement he got was walking from his car to his office. He was trying to fix his mind while his body was running on empty. We didn't begin with meditation or cognitive therapy. We began with 3 things: sleeping 7 hours, 1 healthy meal a day, and a 20-minute walk. 3 weeks later, he came back and said, "I had no idea my life could change so much from just 3 basic things." And I told him the same thing I want to tell you: your mind isn't broken. It's simply hungry. The Stoics saw eating as a moral act, not an act of deprivation, but an act of self-respect. Eating mindfully means that when you put food in your mouth, you know why you're doing it, not to hide from emotions, not to fill an inner void, but to nourish the only tool that allows you to live fully. Then there's sleep. Modern sleep research now confirms what the Romans instinctively understood: you cannot be the strongest version of yourself when you're sleep deprived. Sleep is when the brain clears waste, organizes memory, and restores emotional balance. It's when the sword of the mind is sharpened again. And I know, in today's world, movement can feel difficult to maintain. But remember, you don't need a gym. You don't need equipment. You only need 20 minutes to remind your body that it is alive, that you are still the one in control. Walk, jog lightly, lift something heavy, do push-ups, climb stairs. Every action sends the same message: I am still in command. And this message matters even more than the exercise itself. One of the most profound Stoic principles is voluntary discomfort, choosing discomfort on purpose. When you take a cold shower, choose stairs instead of the elevator, or eat simply instead of indulging out of habit. You're doing something powerful. You are training your will. If you can withstand cold water for 20 seconds, you can withstand uncomfortable emotions. If you can sweat through a basic workout, you can stay calm during a heated conversation. The body trains the mind through the language of action. One of my patients once told me she felt small, insecure, lacking inner strength. I didn't ask her to repeat affirmations or recite positive statements. Instead, I asked her to walk up 6 flights of stairs every morning for 1 week. 7 days later, she told me, "I don't feel weak anymore." Not because she ran faster or became stronger physically, but because she now knew she could push through discomfort. That's why the Stoics always emphasize this truth. The body is the physical evidence of willpower. You can't see willpower, you can't touch it, but you can see your body when it does something hard. You see your breath strengthen. You see your steps become steadier. Every time you overcome a small discomfort, your will grows, even if you don't realize it. And just like inner order, training the body is not a project. It is a promise. A promise that you will treat your body as the most essential tool you own. A promise that you won't expect your mind to be strong while your body is exhausted. If you want to begin tonight, start with something tiny. Drink 1 extra glass of water, or take a 10-minute walk, or turn off your screens 30 minutes before sleep. These small actions won't change your life overnight, but they will change the landscape inside you, and your mind will feel that shift. So if you feel your life slowly falling out of balance, remember this. Maybe you don't need to repair your soul. Maybe you just need to care for your body again. And before we move on to the next rule, I want you to ask yourself, when I look at my body today, do I see the reflection of my will? Keep that question close. It will take you far. I want you to pause for a moment and recall the last time you stood in front of a difficult choice. Not a life-changing decision. Not something dramatic, just the small ones. Choosing whether to tell the truth or soften it. Finishing a task or putting it off until tomorrow. Holding your calm or letting anger pull you far beyond where you meant to go. Saying, "I'm sorry," or waiting for the other person to apologize first. These small moments happen dozens of times a day, and no one sees the battle happening inside your head. But it's exactly these tiny moments, repeated over months and years, that determine who you become. Stoicism reminds us that the easy thing never takes us far. The easy path gives us a quick sense of relief, the kind that lasts for minutes but leaves consequences for days, months, even years. The right thing, on the other hand, always comes with a cost. It makes you a bit scared, a bit uncomfortable, a bit exposed. It can even make you look less likable in the eyes of others because you're not following the crowd. But the right thing is the only thing that builds real inner strength. I remember a patient of mine named Rachel. She told me she had always seen herself as someone who lacked confidence, avoided conflict, and chose silence to keep the peace. But the more she avoided, the smaller and weaker she felt, and the easier it became for the world to hurt her. One day, she had to face something terrifying for her, expressing her true feelings during an important meeting. Her heart pounded, her hands shook, her words caught in her throat. After that meeting, she sent me an email. It had only one line. "Today, I chose the right thing, not the easy thing." And you know what? Nothing magical happened overnight. She didn't suddenly become a strong person in one day. But that feeling, of standing up for what was right, was like lifting her first weight. Heavy. Uncomfortable. But once she did it once, her moral muscle grew. Then she was able to do it a second time. Then a third. The Stoics believed that virtue isn't what you think, it's what you do. Willpower doesn't grow from hope, but from action, and each time you choose the right thing over the easy thing, you're training yourself in the deepest way possible. I want you to imagine something. Imagine you're standing in front of 2 doors. One is wide open, brightly lit, leading straight into immediate comfort. The other is narrow, dim, and you have no idea what waits behind it. The first door is the easy path. The second door is the right path. And somehow, life always rewards those who dare to walk through the second door. Not with material rewards, but with growth, with peace, with a kind of self-respect no one else can give you. Have you ever done the right thing and felt lonely afterward? Like when you refused to gossip even though everyone else was doing it. When you admitted your mistake even though you were only partly wrong. When you stopped to help someone even though you were in a rush. When you kept a promise long after the excitement had faded. No one comes to clap for you in those moments. But deep inside, you know you won an important battle. A battle no one saw you fight. But you felt it. One question I teach many of my patients is a question you can carry for the rest of your life. Am I choosing the right thing? Or the easy thing? And when you're honest with yourself, the answer is always clearer than you expect. One of my students once said, "But doing the right thing is exhausting." I replied, "Yes, it is, but doing the wrong thing exhausts you forever." The wrong thing never stays small. It doesn't just damage the future. It drains your inner strength in the present. Every time you choose it, you shrink just a little. Do you ever notice that? The right thing does the opposite. It makes you grow, even if only a millimeter at a time. And inner strength is not built in giant leaps. It is built in millimeters, collected daily. I have a friend who runs long distance. He once told me, "No one sees me when I choose to run one more mile. But I know that mile turns me into someone different." Doing the right thing is exactly like that. No one sees you practicing it. No one applauds. No one takes a picture. But every time you choose the right thing, no matter how small, you run one more mile for your character. And one day, you look back and find yourself standing in a place your old self could never have reached. The Stoics never said life is easy. They only said the strong are the ones who choose the difficult path when necessary. True freedom does not come from avoiding discomfort, but from knowing you can walk through it. So next time you face a choice, pause for just a few seconds. Ask yourself gently, am I choosing the right thing or the easy thing? And if you choose the right thing, know this: you've just trained your moral muscle one more time. It will take time to grow, but once it does, it becomes your protection against the storms of life. Before we move on to the next rule, I want you to ask yourself, what small decision today can I do right, even if it's a bit harder? Keep that question in your heart. It will guide you through more moments than you can imagine. I want you to imagine your mind as a vast kingdom. A place with fertile fields of clarity, forests of memory, rivers of emotion, and tall towers of reason. But also a place with dark alleys, dusty corners, and constant knocking from outside noise. And like any kingdom, if you don't rule it, someone else will. We're living in an age where mental noise has never been louder. Notifications pop up every few minutes. Social media pulls you along like an endless current. Thousands of opinions, pieces of advice, arguments, comparisons, expectations, all flooding into your mind before you even realize you've been swept away. I once asked a young client in my California practice, "Have you ever sat still for 1 minute without touching your phone?" He laughed and said, "The moment I sit still, my head gets loud, so I open my phone to avoid thinking." His answer left me silent, not because it was wrong, but because it was so true. Many of us are no longer afraid of noise. We're afraid of silence. Afraid of looking inward. Afraid to realize our mind is running without direction, like a driverless car on a highway. Stoicism teaches something we need now more than ever. If you want to live with purpose, you must first master your mind. A mind without guidance will be occupied by noise. A mind without nourishment becomes fertile ground for anxiety. And a mind left untrained will react instead of choose. Let me tell you this from experience. Every thought you let into your mind is a brick. It can build a castle or build a prison. That's why I ask many of my clients to start with one simple practice, a 7-day mental detox. Not the complicated kind. Just 30 minutes every morning spent reading something that feeds your mind. No scrolling, no emails, no news. Only 30 minutes. But those 30 minutes are like reclaiming the throne of your kingdom before the outside world breaks down the doors. I remember a man named Stephen, who worked in finance. He said his mind felt like a runaway train, always speeding, never stopping. But when he tried the 7-day detox, what surprised him most wasn't the calm. It was the empty spaces he began to notice, spaces that had been drowned out by noise for years. And those spaces? That's where wisdom lives. That's where intuition breathes. That's where meaning appears. And when your mind finally has space, you begin asking deeper questions. Not, how can I get more? But, who am I becoming? This question has been a turning point for so many people I've worked with. It shifts you from outcome-driven thinking to identity-driven thinking. It moves you from chasing goals to shaping the person you want to be. Many people live their lives like they're collecting gemstones. More money, more success, more praise. But if you never ask, who do I want to become? You may end up trading your character to reach your goals. And in that case, even if you win, you lose. Stoicism doesn't care what you have. It cares who you are when you have nothing. A crucial part of mastering the mind is identifying the limiting beliefs hiding under your daily thoughts. Beliefs like, I'm not good enough. I'm just born this way. I can't change. I'll fail anyway. They feel real, but they aren't truth. They're invisible walls built by fear. And the dangerous part is, most of the time, you don't realize you're believing them. So I want you to try a very simple exercise. Write down 3 beliefs that are holding you back. Be blunt, be honest. Then rewrite each one as a statement of strength. I'm not good enough becomes, I am learning to grow stronger every day. I can't change becomes, I change through small choices. I'll fail anyway becomes, I am brave enough to move forward. Even if I fail. You don't have to believe these new sentences right away. What matters is that you're willing to rewrite them. Willing to challenge your own mind. Because the mind, like a child, will believe whatever you repeat the most. Another principle Stoicism emphasizes is the ability to observe your thoughts. Not control all of them, but to recognize which ones serve you and which ones harm you. Every thought has a direction. Some lead you toward right action. Others push you toward fear, delay, anger, or inadequacy. I teach my clients to see their thoughts as guests entering the home of the mind. Not every guest is meant to stay. You have the right to open the door and the right to let them go. It sounds simple, but if you practice it daily, something profound happens. You no longer get dragged around by your thoughts. You choose the thoughts you want to nurture. And when you master your thoughts, you master your life. I want you to remember this. Your mind is your kingdom. No one has the right to rule it unless you hand them the crown. Not social media. Not criticism. Not fear. Not the past. You can begin building that kingdom today with 3 small choices. Choose what you read. Choose what you believe. Choose which thoughts you keep. And before we move on to the next rule, I want you to ask yourself, if my mind were a kingdom today, am I ruling it, or letting others rule it for me? Hold that question closely. It might just change the entire direction of your life. There is something I've learned after many years of working with people, from high-powered executives in New York, to single mothers in Texas, to soldiers returning from war, to young students struggling to find their place in the world. The human heart is not weak because it's been hurt. The heart only becomes weak when it has been closed for too long. We often confuse toughness with numbness, healing with hiding, maturity with shutting ourselves off. But you and I both know the truth. No one is truly strong when they have locked their heart away from the world. Stoicism does not teach us to be emotionless. In fact, it teaches us the courage to open the heart again, even when we know opening it means we may feel pain. The Stoics understood that the heart only lives when it connects, when it gives, when it relates to others. I once met a man named Jorge, a firefighter. He had seen things no one ever wants to witness. When he walked into my office, he told me he could no longer feel joy. It's not that I'm sad, he said. I just don't feel anything. That wasn't depression. It was a heart that had closed itself after years of self-protection. Like shutting all the doors of your home during winter, so tightly that even sunlight can no longer get in. To heal the heart, the first step is not to fling it wide open. It's to give it a chance to speak again. That's why I often begin with the simplest of practices. Sit quietly for 5 minutes a day. No music. No phone. No trying to meditate properly. Just sit and give your heart space to make a sound. Not every voice you hear will be pleasant. Some carry memories. Some carry warnings. Some carry the things you've buried for years. But all of them are you. And the heart only begins to heal when you're patient enough to listen. One of the most important lessons I've learned in this work is this. The heart doesn't break because of pain. It breaks because you never let it speak. Then comes another powerful practice, forgiving one thing each night. I know, the word, forgive, sounds big, heavy, almost impossible. But I'm not asking you to forgive your deepest wounds right away. I'm talking about the small ones. A comment that irritated you. A tiny mistake you blamed yourself for. Something you know you could have done better. Forgiveness isn't about whether others deserve peace. It's about whether you deserve freedom. And the heart's freedom never comes from holding everything inside. It comes from releasing it little by little. I once had a patient who had carried anger toward her mother for nearly 20 years. When I asked her to try forgiving one small thing each night, she said it sounded childish. But a month later, she returned and said, I'm not ready to forgive everything. But for the first time in years, my heart doesn't feel like a clenched fist anymore. That is the power of dropping even a little bit of your burden each day. But the heart doesn't heal through listening and forgiveness alone. It is revived through connection. We were not made to live in isolation. From ancient philosophy to modern science, everything points to the same truth. Human beings are strongest when they are connected to others. The Stoics called this sympatheia, the deep interconnection of all people. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What harms the hive harms the bee." Meaning, you cannot thrive alone. So when your heart feels tired, one of the best things you can do is help someone, even in a small way. Hold the door. Send an encouraging message. Ask someone genuinely how they are. A woman once told me, I spent years trying to find joy for myself, but I only began to feel it again when I started creating joy for others. That is the strange and beautiful truth of the heart. It is nourished by what it gives. And finally, I want you to rediscover the moments that make you feel truly alive. Not just existing. Not just completing tasks. Not just fulfilling obligations. But living. Maybe it's the cold morning breeze on your face. Maybe it's a real laugh with someone you love. Maybe it's the moment you finish something you once feared. Maybe it's looking up at the sky and realizing the world is bigger than your worries. Those moments are not trophies to collect. They are markers reminding your heart that it is still beating. I believe an open heart is the most powerful source of energy a human being possesses. An open heart is not a heart without pain. It is a heart strong enough to stay open despite having been hurt. If you've listened this far, I want to ask you something gentle but deep. When was the last time you gave your heart a chance to breathe? If you can't remember, then maybe today is the right day to begin again. And before we close this rule, I want you to carry one truth. Your heart doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to be open. Because when your heart opens, your energy shifts, your perspective changes, your way of living transforms. And life, in its own quiet way, begins to open back up to you. Now that we've walked through all 5 rules together, you may begin to notice something interesting. None of these rules stand alone. They're like 5 pieces of a larger picture, and only when you place them side by side do you see the true shape of transformation. The Stoics never saw life as a collection of separate parts. They saw it as a flow. The mind, the body, and the heart are not 3 independent entities, they are 3 dimensions of you. When one weakens, the other 2 must struggle to compensate, and when all 3 run empty, you lose direction, lose energy, and lose the sense of who you are. But when one rises, the other 3 shift with it. Take a moment to look back on our journey so far. When you establish inner order, you gain clarity about what truly matters. And with that clarity, you naturally have more energy to care for your body. You eat more mindfully, you sleep more deeply, you move more often. And when your body grows stronger, your mind sharpens. The fog lifts. The laziness loosens. The lack of focus fades. You gain enough awareness to recognize which thoughts build you and which thoughts break you. You begin to understand who you need to become instead of chasing what you want to have. And then, when your mind clears and your body strengthens, your heart begins to open. You finally have enough strength to face old wounds, enough calm to forgive, and enough emotional energy to connect with the people around you. You stop living in defensive mode. You begin living in expansion. And when your heart opens, returning to inner order becomes easier. You are no longer overwhelmed by emotions that were once trapped inside. Do you see it? These 5 rules are not 5 separate paths. They are one circle, a circle of rebirth. The mind gives direction to the body. The body provides strength to the heart. The heart gives meaning back to the mind. And the circle continues day after day, month after month. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to apply everything at once. You only need to take one step into the circle, and the circle will carry you forward. I once worked with a woman named Amelia, living in Chicago. She came to me exhausted, unable to feel love, unable to feel motivation, unable to believe she could change. We didn't begin with big goals. We began with the simplest rule: emotional cleanup each night. 1 week later, she said she was finally breathing deeper. 2 weeks later, she began walking every morning. 3 weeks later, she started speaking honestly in meetings. 1 month later, she began forgiving. 2 months later, she said she felt alive, not just existing. There was no dramatic transformation. Just a circle, repeating quietly, gently, yet powerfully. Stoicism doesn't turn you into someone else. It brings you back to yourself, the version you lost somewhere in the noise, pressure, and rush of modern life. And if you're listening to this now, I want you to know, your journey doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to begin. Imagine the strongest version of yourself standing just a few steps ahead. That version has a clear mind, a strong body, an open heart, and a steady spirit. Not perfect, not pain-free, but whole, grounded, and genuinely alive. I want you to imagine that version of you looking back right now and saying, "I'm waiting for you." Not waiting for you to change everything at once. Just waiting for one small step. One step is enough to set the circle in motion. You can start by sitting still for 5 minutes tonight, or turning off your phone for 30 minutes tomorrow morning, or forgiving one small thing before bed, or taking a 10-minute walk, or asking yourself, who do I want to become? I don't know which step is right for you today, but I trust that you do. And now, I want to invite you to do something with me, right below this video. Leave a comment. The first step I choose today is, write it down. Put it into words. Because the moment you speak your first step, you've already entered your circle of transformation. Hit like if this video touched some part of you. Subscribe so you and I can keep walking together on this journey of becoming stronger, deeper, and freer. And if you know someone who needs a gentle reminder, a new direction, or simply the feeling that they're not alone, share this video with them. Thank you for spending your time here. Your journey does not begin when life gets better. It begins right now, in the very moment you choose to step into your circle. I'll see you in the next video, where we continue building a stronger mind, a steadier body, and a more open heart.